During the turbulent Sengoku period, Uesugi Kenshin, who was born in 1530 in Echigo Province, now known as Niigata Prefecture, became one of the most revered samurai warlords in Japan. Kenshin was revered for his unparalleled martial skill, strategic brilliance, and a dedication to honor and justice, and he was popularly known as the Dragon of Echigo, renowned for all these great qualities. He earned a storied place in the Japanese military history as a result of his legendary rivalry with one Takeda Shingen, which was marked by the epic battles of Kawanakajima. These battles showcased his tactical brilliance, but also his fierce determination, earning him a place in history not to be forgotten. But he was also a compassionate leader who sought to bring stability and prosperity to his domain. Outside of the battlefield, a devoted Buddhist, and frequently regarded as a great patron of the arts. The ideal of the noble warrior is exemplified by his adherence to the ethical codes of the samurai and his efforts to maintain peace in the midst of this widespread chaos. Not only does the legacy of Kenshin live on in historical accounts and folklore, but it also lives on as a symbol of integrity and valor. It motivates generations to honor the virtues of bravery, loyalty, and strategy in the face of overwhelming adversity. Hello, my friend. Welcome. We are back again for some Japanese history. Admittedly, a bit of a shorter video today, but it's quite interesting. Talk about Uesugi Kenshin. So if you like this kind of stuff, like and subscribe, and if you want more Japanese stuff, I do have them organized into playlists, so you can go take a look there. So let us now begin. Kenshin, who was born under the name Kagetora, was the third, or perhaps the fourth son of the renowned warrior Nagao Tamekage. His life story is indeed quite remarkable because he did not derive from the Uesugi clan, but rather from the Nagao clan. You see, his father's family were the retainers of the Yamanouchi branch of the Uesugi clan. His father had gained some renown with his military victories over his lords Uesugi Akisada, Uesugi Sadanori, and Uesugi Funayoshi. His father's family were thus associated with the Yamanouchi branch of the Uesugi clan. However, in later years, Tamekage found himself at odds with the Iko-Iki of Hokuriku, who were located in the neighboring region. As the political power in the region began to shift in favor of the Iko-Iki, primarily as a result of the sudden Hongan-ji rise, the situation for Echigo quickly deteriorated. 1536 was the year that it reached its pinnacle. Kenshin's father assembled an army and marched west. On the other hand, when he arrived at Sendano in Echu in December of 1536, his forces were suddenly attacked by Enami Kazuyori. As a result of the conflict that ensued, Tamekage himself was killed, and his army was forced to flee. The repercussions were felt almost immediately back in Echigo, after a power struggle that resulted in the death of one of his brothers. Kageyasu Nagao Harukage, the eldest son of Tamekage, immediately made his bid for control of the Nagao clan. He was successful in his claim, and he became Nagao Harukage. After Kenshin was removed from the conflict, he was moved to the Rinsenji Temple, where he devoted his entire life, from the age of 7 to the age of 14, to learning Zen, martial arts, and other disciplines. But in a sudden and unexpected manner, Kenshin was contacted by Usami Sedamitsu and a number of other people who were acquainted with his late father when he was 14 years old. They strongly encouraged the young son to travel to Echigo and challenge the authority of his older brother. It would appear that Harukage had not been the most effective or inspiring leader possible, most likely as a result of his reportedly poor health and his inability to exert control and gain support from the influential Kokujin families, had resulted in a situation that was almost to the point of tearing the province completely apart. Kenshin was initially hesitant to take the field against his own brother, but he eventually came to the realization that it was essential for the survival of the Echigo. At least, this is how the story is told. A call to destiny that Kenshin would answer. He was able to successfully wrest control of the Nagao clan from Nagao Harukage in the year 1548. He was then given joint command of Tochio Castle when he was only 15 years old, and gained a reputation for himself by successfully defending the castle against the rebels who were plotting against the Uesugi clan. In order to hand over the leadership of the clan and the provincial government to his younger brother, Nagao Harukage resigned from his position as leader of both organizations, and after another 5 years, Harukage passed away in 1553. When Kenshin was 19 years old, he was promoted to the position of the head of the Nagao clan, and then he entered Kasugayama Castle. However, he did continue to serve as the retainer of the Uesugi clan. In the year 1551, Kenshin received a request to offer refuge in his castle to his nominal lord, Uesugi Norimasa. Norimasa had been compelled to flee the Kanto region as a result of the expansion into the Kanto region by the Lord Hojo Ujiyasu, who was a member of the Hojo clan. However, he was not in a position to take action against Hojo at the time, despite the fact that he agreed to provide the warlord with shelter, on certain conditions, of course. Among the conditions that were stipulated were Norimasa's decision to accept Kenshin as his heir, the title of Lord of Echigo, and the position of Kanto Kanrei as the deputy of the shogun. The name Uesugi was passed down from Uesugi Norimasa to Nagao Kagetora, a member of the Nagao clan. This resulted in Uesugi Masatora becoming the governor of Echigo, a position that allowed him to gain significant power. Between the years 1552 and 1553, the Uesugi began their war against the Hojo clan. There was still a significant portion of Echigo that was not under the control of this young warlord, despite the fact that his authority over the Nagao and Uesugi clans was now uncontested. In an instant, Kenshin embarked on a mission to establish his authority in the region. However, these endeavors were still in their infancy, when much more pressing concerns began to emerge. Ogasawara Nakatoki and Murakami Yoshikiyo, two Shinano lords, both appeared before Kenshin in the year 1553. They had asked him for assistance in putting a stop to the advances of Takeda Shingen, a powerful and dangerous warlord. In the vicinity of the time that Kenshin was elevated to the position of Lord of Echigo, Shingen had achieved significant outcomes in Shinano Province. Kenshin agreed to take the field on two fronts, against Hojo and Takeda, as the Takeda's conquests brought them remarkably close to the borders of Echigo. However, the conflicts between the three lords revealed that there were also various alliances and treaties between them. Things were complicated. After succeeding Yamanouchi Uesugi as the head of the Yamanouchi Uesugi family and assuming the position of Kanto Kandre in 1561, Masatora changed his name to Uesugi Terutora. Later on, he changed his name once more, and after he became a Buddhist monk, he finally changed his name to Kenshin. The events that transpired after the Kenshin Triple Alliance marked the beginning of a rivalry that would go on to become somewhat legendary in the annals of Japanese history and the Sengoku period. Both Uesugi Kenshin and Takeda Shingen were extremely cautious during the initial conflict. They only engaged in skirmishes that were borderline indecisive against one another. Pyrrhic victories, that kind of thing. Although there would be a total of 5 such engagements at the well-known site of Kawanakajima over the course of the years 1553, 55, 57, 61, and 64, it was only the 4th battle that would prove to be a serious all-out fight between the two. So during the 4th Battle of Kawanakajima, which took place in 1561, Kenshin and Shingen engaged in the most significant conflict they would ever face. An ingenious strategy was utilized by Kenshin, which consisted of a special formation in which soldiers in the front would switch places with their comrades in the rear, so as those in the front line would not become exhausted or injured. As a result, the exhausted soldiers were able to take a break, while the other soldiers had not yet been involved in combat were able to continue to fight on the front lines. I'm sure this all sounds familiar. Well, the Romans had been doing this for long enough, but it was not quite caught on in other parts of the world. As a result of this strategy, Kenshin came very close to defeating Shingen. It was an extremely effective strategy. He was able to ride up to Shingen and slash at him with a sword during this battle too, which is considered to be one of the most famous instances of single combat in the history of the samurai, a duel to decide the fate of the country. This particular match took place in Koyogunkan. The blows were deflected away from Shingen by his iron war fan, also known as a tessen. And despite the best efforts of Kenshin, Shingen was unable to be eliminated before a Takeda retainer drove him away. After Shingen launched a counterattack, the Uesugi army withdrew from the encounter. There is still a lack of clarity regarding the outcome of the 4th Battle of Kawanakajima. It's generally considered to have been a draw, because there is a lot of disagreement among academics regarding who the actual winner was, assuming that it was even decisive enough to be declared a winner. Shingen also lost 2 of his most important generals during the battle, namely his advisor Yamamoto Kansuke and his younger brother Takeda Nobushige. It was considered to be the battle with the highest number of casualties during the Sengoku period, with an estimated 72% of Kenshin's army and 62 of Shingen's army being lost. But, as always, modern retrospective archaeology history tends to write a little bit more of a boring story. Estimates that are more conservative place a number of casualties somewhere around 20% for pretty much both sides, which is, well, somewhat normal. It's not so much of a bombastic estimate, isn't it? Either way, when Shingen joined forces with Hojo Ujiyasu in 1563 to fight the Uesugi clan, they were successful in seizing Matsuyama Castle, which was located in Musashi Province. In the year 1565, Shingen successfully captured both Kuragano Castle and Minowa Castle, both located in the province of Kozuke. In the year 1571, Kenshin launched an assault on Shingen's satellite, Ishikura Castle, located in the province of Kozuke. Subsequently, they once again confronted one another during the Battle of Tonegawa. In addition, following Shingen's broken relationship with the Hojo, there was an incident in which the Hojo clan decided to refrain from supplying salt to the province of Kai, which of course is an extremely important commodity. After learning about Shingen's predicament, Kenshin dispatched salt from his own province to Shingen in order to help him. Kenshin made a remark that they had performed a very mean act by the Hojo. Dishonorable, I suppose. Kenshin continued by saying, "I do not spar with salt. Rather, I fight with the sword." Now that is the samurai ethos. According to the records, Kenshin didn't just send salt. Rather, he allowed the merchants of Echigo to sell their salts in Takeda's territory. And this raises the question about the extent to which Kenshin's actions were motivated solely by consideration for others. Essentially, it was argued that Kenshin also saw the economic opportunity for merchants under his rule to prosper by going into Shingen's territories and selling the salt, which was desperately needed by the people of Kai due to the embargo. In response to Shingen's passing, Kenshin privately shed tears and expressed his sorrow, saying that he had lost his good rival. Of course, he did not want something like a salt shortage to weaken him. And when you basically base your life around fighting that one enemy, there's not much to do afterwards. It demonstrates this level of old-fashioned respect that Kenshin had for Shingen. In spite of the fact that this competition with Shingen was legendary, Kenshin was also engaged in a number of other endeavors during the period that encompassed those well-known battles between 53 and 64. In the year 1559, he embarked on a journey to Kyoto, accompanied by a group of 5,000 men, with the intention of paying homage and respect to the shogun. Of course, Kyoto used to be the old capital. His reputation was significantly enhanced as a result of this, and it contributed to his image as a warlord, who was also a culturally savvy leader. It was in the same year that Uesugi Norimasa exerted additional pressure on him to regain control of the Kanto from the Hojo, and he was finally able to comply with this demand in the year 1560. In August of that same year, he established a small investigative council for any kind of unrest and brought southern Echigo under the control of a 5-man council for broad mobilization. In the fall of 1560, he continued through the summer of 1561, leading a campaign against Hojo Ujiyasu. During this time, he was successful in capturing a number of castles from the clan, including Numata Castle and Umayabashi Castle. The campaign culminated in the first siege of Odawara Castle, which was located in Sagami Province. He was successful in breaching the defenses and setting the whole town on fire, but the castle itself remained unconquerable. Kenshin, in the year of 1563, rescued his ally Ota Tsukemasa, who was being besieged by both Hojo Ujiyasu and Takeda Shingen. In November of 1569, when Shingen was laying siege to Odawara Castle, Ujiyasu made a request for assistance from Kenshin regarding the situation. It was in the year 1566, some 3 years later, when the Yura clan of Kozuke Province switched their allegiance to the Hojo clan instead. In the latter part of the year 1574, Kenshin gave the order for the Satake clan to assault the Kanayama Castle of the Yura clan. Kenshin himself took part in the siege, but the Kanayama Castle was ultimately able to withstand the assault. Sano Domain, located in the Kozuke province, was occupied by Kenshin in the year 1563. He laid siege to Karasawa Castle in order to defeat Sano Masatsune, and made significant inroads into the region, which resulted in a significant number of the lesser warlords being forced to submit to him. The year 1564 marked the point at which Kenshin gained control over both Echizen Province and Kozuke Province. The establishment of an alliance between Kenshin, Hojo Ujiyasu, and Oda Nobunaga took place on the 12th of June of that same year. Later on, during the same month, Shingen requested that the shogun Yoshiaki Ashikaga and Nobunaga mediate a peace agreement with Kenshin. In response, Nobunaga requested that Kenshin request a peace agreement with Shingen during a meeting that was referred to as the Goetsu Peace Agreement. However, in March of the following year, Kenshin decided to break the negotiation with Shingen and instead affirm his alliance with the Hojo clan. In the meantime, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who at the time was an ally of the Hojo clan, was attempting to form an alliance with Kenshin by dispatching an envoy to the Uesugi clan. In response, Kenshin sent a reply to Sakai Tadatsugu, the senior vassal of the Tokugawa, as well as Matsudaira Masanori, a member of the Matsudaira clan and the son of Yoshinori, who lived from 1546 to 1582. In his response, he made it clear that he intended to reach a compromise with the other party. Beginning at this point, concrete alliance negotiations had begun to be initiated, and on the 8th of October, Ieyasu made a commitment to Kenshin while simultaneously severing his relationship with the entire Takeda clan. While Ieyasu was in the process of forming an alliance with Kenshin, he made a solemn vow to end his cooperation and relationship with Shingen. He also made it possible for the marriage proposal that was being entertained between Nobunaga and Shingen's relatives to be cancelled. The Echigo Province, located in the western regions, was another significant region that piqued the interest of Uesugi Kenshin. He would devote nearly half of his life to being involved in the political affairs of that province. The Jinbo and the Shinna, two clans that were bitterly at odds with one another, inhabited that land. At the beginning of the 1560s, Kenshin initially became involved in the conflict by acting as a kind of mediator between the rivals Shinna Yasutane and Jinbo Nagamoto. However, he eventually took the side of the Shinna clan and assumed control of the Jinbo. After numerous decades, Kenshin turned his back on the Shina, seizing their main castle in the year 1570, and arranging for Shina Yasutane to be murdered by one Kojima Motoshige some several years later. After capturing Toyama Castle and Matsukura Castle in the 1570s, he was able to establish his rule over Echigo, as well as his control over Kasugayama Province, Echigo Province, and a few neighboring provinces, as well as the entire Hokuriku seaboard. Additionally, Kenshin ultimately defeated Oda Nobunaga's forces in Echizen Province. In the year 1568, when Oda Nobunaga appointed Ashikaga Yoshiaki to the position of shogun, Kenshin showed his support and admiration for Nobunaga. An extended period of time passed, during which they maintained a positive relationship. However, in 1573, when Nobunaga expelled Yoshiaki, the relationship became more delicate. That's one word for it. While Yoshiaki was under the protection of the Mori clan, he started making frequent requests to Uesugi, Takeda, and Hojo, urging them to join forces and challenge the authority of Nobunaga. The alliance that Kenshin had with Nobunaga was severed. As a result of Yoshiaki's mediation, he was able to rectify his relationship with Genyo and establish a coalition and join the group of individuals who were more opposed to Nobunaga. Kenshin was quick to seize the opportunity that presented itself when the death of Hatakeyama Yoshitaka, the lord of the Noto province, caused confusion and conflict. He took the land from the clan that had been weakened and successfully besieged Nagao Castle, which put him in a position to threaten Nobunaga and his allies. In retaliation, Nobunaga gathered his own forces as well as those of the most capable generals, Shibata, Katsuie, and Maeda Toshie, in order to confront Kenshin at the Battle of Tedorigawa in 1577, which took place in the province of Kaga. Kenshin established his army, which consisted of 30,000 soldiers, at the castle of Matsuto, while Nobunaga's forces arrived with 50,000 soldiers of their own, led by a number of well-known and experienced generals. In spite of the fact that Nobunaga had a greater number of men, Kenshin was able to secure a decisive victory. He initially anticipated that Nobunaga would attempt to move by night over the river in preparation for an attack at dawn. As a result, he chose not to engage the Nobunaga army before that time, and after he pretended to send out a small unit to attack Nobunaga's main force from behind, which provided his adversary with a fantastic opportunity to crush his remaining force. Nobunaga took the bait. The force led by Nobunaga attacked during the night, anticipating that their adversary at the front would be weaker. However, the full might of Kenshin and his military force was waiting for them. Due to the fact that the Oda troops had suffered a loss of 1,000 men in combat and additional casualties as they attempted to cross the Todori River, Nobunaga issued an order of retreat into Omi Province. On the other hand, Kenshin, who referred to the opponent's performance as surprisingly weak, was under the mistaken impression that he had triumphed completely over Nobunaga. But in reality, Shibata Katsuie was the one who led the Oda army. In the end, Kenshin was successful in getting the Noto province back from the Oda clan. During the month of October, in the year 1577, Kenshin prepared to launch a massive army in order to continue his assaults into Nobunaga's territory. He formed an alliance with Takeda Katsuyori in 1578 to fight against Nobunaga, but he was unable to complete the battle. Poor weather conditions, always. Unfortunately, he passed away in the spring of 1578, reportedly from throat cancer. Not a good way to go at all. He did leave a note on his deathbed, though, and it reads like this: "Even a lifelong prosperity is but one cup of sake. A life of 49 years is passed in a dream. I know not what life is, nor death. Year in, year out, all but a dream. Both heaven and hell are left behind. I stand in the moonlight dawn, free from clouds of attachment." You just imagine finding a note like that on somebody's deathbed, reading it and thinking, good Lord, what have we lost? Last words. Well, of course, questions have been raised, as they always do get raised over the years, regarding the exact circumstance around Kenshin's passing. The theory that is accepted by the majority records that his deterioration of health conditions, his complaints of a pain in the chest and like an iron ball, that kind of feeling that he had felt in his throat. And as Kenshin Gunki in 1582 records, on the 9th day of the 3rd month, he had a stomach ache. And, well, that can mean really anything, can't it? Unfortunately, this continued until the 13th day, which was the day that he passed away. We may well imagine that it was not a peaceful passing. It's also speculated that he was a victim of one of the most well-known ninja assassinations, which was carried out by a ninja who employed a short spear or sword and concealed themselves in the cesspool that was located beneath the latrine at Kenshin's camp. The hypotheses are not really incompatible with one another, at least. Well, the assassin, if he existed, might have merely inflicted fatal wounds on the man that was already in the process of passing away anyway. On the other hand, given that the death poem records the thought of his regarding his own demise, the likelihood of assassination occurring is a little bit reduced. Either way, I think that the cancer and all the stomach pains were doing most of the work for the assassin. Well, on the domestic front, Kenshin left behind a crisis regarding the succession. The only children that Kenshin ever had were 2 boys that he adopted during his lifetime. He never had any children of his own. Uesugi Kagekatsu, his nephew, was most likely adopted by Nagao Masakage, Kagekatsu's father, as well as other relatives and supporters, in order to deflect the animosity that was being directed toward him. Another adopted son, Uesugi Kagetora, who was originally the son of Hojo Ujiyasu, was adopted in order to ensure the safety of the Echigo's international boundaries. While there are those who do believe that Kenshin made the decision to divide the estates between the two, there are also others who equally believe that Kagekatsu was supposed to be gradually established as the true heir. The claims made by both sons were reasonable. They both had external blood ties. It was an even playing field for the both of them. Kagetora was besieged at Otate in the year of 1578, and despite the fact that Hojo Ujimasa and Takeda Katsuyori were contacted for assistance, the former retreated from their position due to the fact that Kagekatsu wed Takeda's sister, he was eventually able to ensure that Takeda would actually succeed him. It was in 1579 when Kagetora took his own life, after escaping to a castle close to the border between Shinano and Echigo. As a consequence of the death, there were power struggles in the local community, leading to an almost decade-long period of chaotic infighting in Echigo between the years 1578 and 87. This conflict is typically classified as the Otate disturbance and the Shibata rebellion. So we have the Otate disturbance between 1578 and 1582, and then the rebellion from 82 to 87. Over the course of several years, supporters of the Kagetora continued to put up a fight in the north-central region of Echigo. Shibata Shigeya, who was vassal of Kagekatsu, led a rebellion in the north of Echigo in the year of 1582. This rebellion was most likely caused by the low rewards that he received for his support of Kagekatsu, feeling a little bit ripped off, I assume. But it was more strongly motivated by the fact that Kagekatsu had granted Takemata Yoshitsuna control over the toll barriers in the port of Niigata. Either way, it always comes down to money, doesn't it? Nevertheless, in the aftermath of the costly internal conflict, the Oda clan took advantage of the rebellions against Kagekatsu in order to advance all the way up the border of Echigo. They ended up capturing Noto and Kaga, while the Uesugi brothers were engaged in the conflict within their own clan. This, in conjunction with the annihilation of the Takeda clan, which was Uesugi's ally at the time, but had been Oda's adversary for a long time, would come dangerously close to annihilating the Uesugi clan before Oda Nobunaga's own death once again shattered the equilibrium of power in Japan. Of course, that is a story for another video, isn't it? Well, and with that, we reach the end of the life of Uesugi Kenshin. I hope it was all that you wanted it to be. Nice little deathbed poem in there in the middle, wasn't it? So I will thank my top-tier patrons and supporters: Dark, Gary, Kimberly, Ember, Ben, Britt, Charles, Erin, James, Jeffrey, Melissa, Scott, Stark Factory, Wendy, Jaden, Sherry, Jessica, Christine, Sally, Katiana, Christine, Fizabo, Legitmus, Maverick, Susan, Dr. Neuro Nerd, Cameron, Alexander, Nicholas, Daniel, JR, and Charlene. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Perhaps some more Japanese history for you. Good night.